There are mysteries that sleep beneath the skin of our world. Ancient whispers carved into stone, written into the dust of forgotten deserts, and hidden in the silence between the stars. Civilizations rise and fall, yet the echoes remain persistent and unresolved. Across continents, from the mountains of Peru to the sand of Egypt, the same question hums beneath the ruins. What if we were not alone when history began? For thousands of years, human beings have looked to the heavens for guidance. In the earliest myths, gods descended from the sky, radiant and powerful, teaching the first men the secrets of fire, agriculture, astronomy, and writing. They came on beams of light, on chariots that burned like the sun, or in spheres that hummed across the firmament. To the ancients, they were divine, beings beyond comprehension. But what if these gods were not gods at all? What if they were something far more tangible, something that left behind traces of its presence that we have mistaken for myth? In the heart of the Andes lies Tiwanaku, a city older than history itself. Its megalithic stones so massive and precise that even today's engineers struggle to explain their construction. The stones bear marks of lost technology, surfaces polished like glass, angles cut with mechanical accuracy, and blocks weighing hundreds of tons fitted together as if molded. Legend says that the gods raised Tiwanaku in a single night. The question is, how? Could these gods have been visitors, beings of flesh and knowledge who came from the sky long before recorded civilization? Move east, and the same question surfaces beneath the golden sands of Egypt. The Great Pyramid of Giza rises not merely as a monument to a pharaoh, but as a geometric enigma, a structure aligned with the cardinal directions to an accuracy of fractions of a degree. Its base encodes mathematical constants, pi, the golden ratio, and even the curvature of the earth. How did a Bronze Age people, armed with copper tools and rope, achieve engineering precision that challenges our modern capabilities? Could it be that they were not working alone? Across the ocean, the Nazca Desert stretches for miles, barren, windless, and etched with lines so vast they can only be seen from the air. Straight paths intersect with complex images. A spider, a hummingbird, a monkey, and strange, elongated figures with arms raised to the sky. The Nazca left no written explanation, no tools, no scaffolding, only these massive geoglyphs that defy purpose. Some say they were ritual pathways. Others claim astronomical calendars. Yet the question remains, why make something you can never see from the ground? Unless, of course, it was meant for someone or something looking down from above. The deeper we look, the more the pattern emerges. Megalithic structures built with impossible precision. Myths of sky beings teaching civilization. Knowledge of the stars far beyond ancient observational capacity. The same motifs, the same symbols, recurring in distant cultures that never met. From the Dogon people of Africa who knew the invisible star Sirius B before modern telescopes confirmed it, to the Sumerians who described beings descending in fiery craft, humanity's earliest stories echo a single narrative, one that suggests contact. And yet, mainstream history insists that our ancestors achieved all this alone, that they built the pyramids through sheer manpower, that they tracked stars through crude observation, that myths of sky gods were nothing more than poetic imagination. But the weight of evidence resists that simplicity. There are patterns, repeating, deliberate, and global, that seem to point to an intelligence not bound to Earth. Imagine for a moment that the legends are literal, that the visitors from the sky were real, and that they came here not to conquer, but to teach. They might have been explorers, scientists, or observers of life in its infancy, beings who guided humanity through its earliest steps, gifting knowledge that would later become mythology. They may have understood energy, vibration, and matter in ways we still struggle to grasp. To ancient eyes, their technology would have appeared as divine magic. If this were true, the implications would shatter everything we believe about human history. Civilization did not begin independently. It was ignited. Humanity was not alone in its birth, but part of a greater design, influenced by minds not of this earth. Perhaps the rise of agriculture, writing, architecture, and astronomy were not isolated leaps of genius, but legacies left behind by those who walked among us before vanishing into the stars. But then comes a deeper question. Why did they leave? If such visitors once guided early humanity, what drove them away? Was it catastrophe, a flood, a war, a cosmic event? Or was their departure planned? part of the cycle that repeats across time? Many ancient texts hint at such a return. The gods promising to come again when the stars align, when mankind is ready to understand. The Sumerian tablets tell of Enki and Enlil, beings who descended to shape mankind from clay, giving them purpose and the spark of intelligence. The Vedic scriptures describe shining beings who rode in celestial chariots, the Vimanas, and waged wars in the sky. The Mayans, too, spoke of the gods descending from the heavens, gifting the calendar, the stars, and time itself. These are not random tales. They form a tapestry woven through every corner of ancient civilization. If all these myths describe the same kind of encounter, beings from above, teaching, creating, then disappearing, could we be looking at a forgotten truth? A pre-human chapter erased by time and rewritten as legend? Modern archaeology refuses to look beyond the human narrative, but the stones themselves tell another story, one of precision beyond primitive means, of knowledge beyond explanation, and of a silence that feels deliberate. Across the earth, the ruins whisper of visitors who came from the stars, leaving behind monuments, knowledge, and memory. Whether they were physical beings or higher intelligences is uncertain. But what is certain is that they were remembered, worshipped as gods, feared as masters, and later dismissed as myth. And yet, the question endures, not in the ruins, but in our own reflection. What if humanity itself is the greatest artifact of all? What if we are the legacy of their presence, a living continuation of something far older than we dare to imagine? For buried beneath the sands, encoded in our myths and perhaps even in our DNA, lies a forgotten truth, that our origins may not be entirely of this earth. And somewhere beyond the stars, those who first came here might still be watching, waiting for the day when we finally remember. The further we peer into our forgotten past, the clearer the pattern becomes, a design that stretches across millennia, linking temples, pyramids, and monuments as if built by a single hand. These were not random achievements of scattered tribes. They were the echoes of a blueprint, a memory left by beings who once shaped the destiny of mankind. If we strip away the myths and reverence, what remains are the facts? Massive stones carved with inexplicable precision, celestial alignments mapped with scientific accuracy, and stories of teachers descending from the sky to bestow civilization upon humanity. The ancients did not see these beings as conquerors, but as bringers of light, those who illuminated the dark wilderness of primitive thought. Consider the megalithic structures of Baalbek in Lebanon. Upon its great platform rest some of the largest cut stones in the world, the trilithon blocks, each weighing over 800 tons. The question is not merely how they were moved, but why such colossal stones were necessary in the first place. Even with modern cranes, lifting a single one of these is nearly impossible. The ancients attributed their construction to the gods, those who descended from the heavens. If these beings possess technology capable of manipulating gravity or matter, such feats become conceivable. To us, their methods seem miraculous. To them, it might have been simple engineering. The pattern repeats at Pumapunku, where massive andesite blocks are cut with such precision that they interlock like puzzle pieces. The corners are razor sharp, the surface is flat to the micron, and the edges groove with mechanical uniformity. Archaeologists call them ceremonial ruins, but their design suggests something far beyond ritual, something functional, mathematical, deliberate. The ancients called this the Gate of the Sun. Perhaps they meant that literally, a portal not of stone, but of resonance, opening to where the teachers once came from. Across the ocean, the story continues in the sands of Egypt. The pyramids, aligned perfectly with Orion's belt, are more than tombs. They are coded messages. The shafts in the Great Pyramid point precisely to specific stars, as though the builders wanted to mark their origin. To the Egyptians, Orion was Osiris, the god who came from the heavens, taught the arts of civilization, and then returned to the stars. What if this was not mythology, but memory, a record of contact preserved in the language of architecture? The alignment of these monuments across the globe is not coincidence. The pyramids of Giza, Teotihuacan, and even the mounds of China mirror celestial constellations. The same mathematical ratios appear again and again, the golden mean, pi, and measurements linked to the Earth's curvature and planetary cycles. Such knowledge should have been beyond reach for ancient builders. Yet it was not. Why? Perhaps because the knowledge was given, passed down from beings who understood the cosmos not as theory, but as lived experience. If we look to ancient texts, the story grows richer still. In the Sumerian tablets, the oldest known written records, we read of the Anunnaki, those who came from the heavens to earth. They brought language, kingship, and metalwork. They shaped mankind from clay and breathed life into it. To scholars, these are myths. To those who listen deeper, they sound like reports, memories of intervention. The Sumerians were clear. The gods were not ethereal spirits. They were physical beings, powerful yet familiar, who walked among men, ate food, and ruled kingdoms. The same theme surfaces in every corner of the ancient world. The Mayans spoke of Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, who descended from the sky in a blaze of light to teach them astronomy and mathematics. In India, the Vedas describe shining beings traveling in vimanas, celestial chariots that could fly from planet to planet, even wage wars in the heavens. In Greece, the gods of Olympus interacted directly with mortals, teaching, mating, and ruling, their relationships complex and human-like. The stories differ in detail but converge in essence. Humanity once shared the earth with a higher intelligence. If that intelligence was not divine but extraterrestrial, then the myths become reports of contact. Ancient memories misinterpreted by civilizations without the language of science. Imagine primitive humans witnessing a craft descending from the sky, emitting light and sound, piloted by beings clad in radiant suits. Lacking context, how else could they describe them but as gods descending from heaven? But this revelation comes with an unsettling question. If they came once, why not again? Did they abandon humanity, or have they remained hidden in plain sight, guiding us from the shadows? Some legends speak of a great withdrawal, a moment when the sky gods left, promising to return when man was ready. Could our myths of divine return, of saviors descending from the heavens, be echoes of that ancient farewell? Even more curious is the transmission of knowledge that followed their departure. The ancients retained fragments, sacred geometry, alchemy, and the understanding of vibration and frequency. Civilizations rose around these fragments like children building castles from scattered pieces of a greater design. Over time, that design became religion. Its technological language turned into symbols and metaphors. What we now call spirituality may be the residue of a once physical science, a technology of consciousness taught by those who understood the fabric of the universe. Modern science still struggles to explain how early humans leapt from hunter-gatherers to astronomers and architects within a few thousand years. Evolution alone does not account for this acceleration. Something ignited human intelligence, as though an external catalyst rewired our perception. Could this have been part of the intervention, a deliberate push to awaken latent potential within us? DNA studies have already revealed mysterious markers in the human genome, sequences that appear anomalous, almost inserted. Some scientists dismiss them as random mutation, but others quietly admit that their origins are puzzling. If humanity was upgraded, then the evidence may not only rest in stone, but within our very cells. We are, perhaps, walking artifacts, living records of a cosmic encounter. Every discovery we make seems to bring us closer to the same realization our ancestors may have already known, that humanity is not the apex of creation, but part of a vast continuum of life. The monuments we revere are not merely relics of stone, but reminders, signposts pointing to the stars, whispering that our story began elsewhere. And maybe, just maybe, those who built them are still watching, not from distant galaxies, but from the threshold between dimensions, waiting for us to rediscover what they once tried to teach. There is a strange familiarity that comes when we gaze up at the night sky, a quiet pull, as if something within us recognizes the vastness above, not as something foreign, but as home. Ancient civilizations didn't see the stars as distant points of light. They saw them as origins, as destinations. Their myths, rituals, and architecture were designed around celestial movements, not because they worshipped the sky, but because they remembered something about it, something we have forgotten. Across the world, ancient texts tell the time when knowledge came from the heavens. The Dogon tribe of Mali, for instance, possess an intricate understanding of the Sirius star system, knowledge that modern astronomy only confirmed with telescopes in the 20th century. They speak of beings called the Namo who descended from the star Sirius, bringing with them wisdom, agriculture, and the foundations of civilization. To the Dogon, this is not myth. It is ancestry. How could a preliterate tribe know that Sirius is a binary star system with one star invisible to the naked eye? How could they describe its orbit and density with such accuracy? The mainstream answer is coincidence or later contamination by contact with Western science. But the oral traditions of the Dogon are far older than any recorded European exploration. If the knowledge was inherited, then who were the Namo, and what connection did they have with the same sky beings described by cultures half a world away? The Sumerians spoke of their gods descending from the heavens, specifically from a world beyond our own. The Egyptians associated the soul's journey with the stars of Orion and Sirius. The Maya saw their gods arriving from the Pleiades. Different names, same message. The seed of humanity came from the stars. It's as though every ancient culture retained a memory, not a belief, but of contact. What if this memory is deeper than myth? What if it's encoded within us? Science tells us of the elements that make up our bodies. Carbon, oxygen, nitrogen were forged in the cores of stars long before Earth existed. We are, in the most literal sense, made of stardust. But perhaps that truth extends beyond the physical. Maybe our consciousness, too, carries an echo of those who shaped it, a resonance with the intelligence that once touched this world. Throughout history, mystics and philosophers have spoken of the music of the spheres, a harmony that connects the cosmos and the soul. Ancient temples were designed to vibrate at specific frequencies, as if to tune the human mind to celestial patterns. Were they merely ritualistic spaces, or instruments, machines of resonance capable of awakening a higher state of awareness? If the visitors who came to Earth were advanced not just in technology but in consciousness, perhaps they taught early humans that the key to the universe lies not in matter, but in vibration. This idea may sound abstract, yet the ancients knew it intimately. The Egyptians believed that sound was the first force of creation, that the universe was spoken into being through the divine word. The Vedic tradition echoes this with the concept of Aum, the primordial vibration that sustains all existence. And in modern physics, we are discovering that matter itself is not solid but composed of vibrating energy fields, strings of potential oscillating in harmony. It's as if our science is slowly rediscovering the same truth through equations that the ancients once encoded in stone. If we follow this thread, we begin to see the ancient monuments in a new light. The pyramids may not have been tombs, but resonators, devices tuned to the frequencies of Earth and the stars. Their proportions mirror the geometry of sound waves. Their chambers designed to amplify resonance. Some researchers have even measured low-frequency vibrations within these structures, as though they were humming with forgotten purpose. Were they communication devices, energy generators, or something more subtle, a bridge between dimensions of perception? Imagine for a moment that our ancestors were not primitive builders, but students, guided by teachers who understood how to harness natural forces, not through combustion or electricity, but through harmony. A civilization that mastered resonance could move stone, heal the body, and perhaps even manipulate gravity. To them, science and spirituality were one, two sides of the same truth. If these teachers came from the stars, it's likely they did not come as conquerors. They came as cultivators, sowing seeds of knowledge, testing whether humanity could grow into something greater. But what if we fail that test? What if, instead of understanding the knowledge as unity, we fractured it into religion, superstition, and war? Every ancient record speaks of a great fall, a time when the gods withdrew, when the world plunged into chaos. It may not have been divine punishment, but disappointment, the withdrawal of guidance from a species not yet ready to use what had been given. Yet they did not leave us empty-handed. They left signs, monuments aligned to the stars, myths that encode celestial maps, and rituals that preserve fragments of the lost science of consciousness. Even the idea of ascension, of humanity rising back toward the light, may be the echo of a promise, that one day we will find them again, not by searching the heavens, but by awakening the same light within ourselves. Modern encounters with unidentified aerial phenomena hint that contact may never have truly ended. The ancient sky gods could be the same presence that humanity glimpses today, reappearing when our awareness reaches a threshold once more. Perhaps they have been guiding us quietly through inspiration, invention, and intuition, waiting for us to reclaim the heritage we long ago forgot. There's an old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Maybe the ancient visitors never left. Maybe it is we who are slowly remembering. The question is not whether they existed, but whether we are ready to understand what they represent, not alien conquerors, but mirrors of our own potential. Because if humanity truly was born from the stars, then our destiny is to return there, not merely through rockets and machines, but through the awakening of the same intelligence that once looked down upon this world and decided it was ready to begin. And in that awakening, perhaps we will realize that the ancient gods were never above us. They were beside us, and may still be waiting for us to rise and meet them again. Every civilization tells the same story, though each wears a different mask. Gods descending from the sky, heroes gifted with fire and knowledge, a golden age when wisdom ruled the earth, followed by a great forgetting. This repetition isn't coincidence. It's memory, a memory that whispers through myth, architecture, and ritual, the memory of the hidden architects who once walked among humankind. They were known by many names: Anunnaki, Apkallu, Neteru, Watchers, Shining Ones. To the Maya, they were the Lords of Light. To the Egyptians, the Keepers of the Sky. Even in the Bible, echoes remain, beings who descended from heaven and took the daughters of men, producing offspring of unusual power and stature. The same pattern recurs across cultures, suggesting a single truth fragmented through the lens of language and time. What if these were not gods in the spiritual sense, but emissaries, explorers, perhaps even scientists who seeded intelligence upon this planet? Their mission may have been simple: to guide a species into awareness, to cultivate civilization, to prepare humanity for its own awakening. But something went wrong. Ancient records speak of a rebellion, a division among the sky beings. Some wished to continue their guidance. Others sought dominion. The Sumerians told of Enki and Enlil, brothers who warred over the fate of mankind. The Book of Enoch describes the Watchers who broke divine law by mating with humans, giving rise to chaos. In both stories, the result was the same: the corruption of the original purpose and the fall of a world that had once known harmony. The ancient world collapsed under a wave of cataclysm. Flood myths from every culture recall the same deluge, the same destruction. What science once dismissed as fable now aligns eerily with geological evidence. A sudden melting of ice, a global flood around 12,000 years ago, an event that reshaped continents and erased civilizations. Could this have been the cleansing that followed the corruption? The resetting of a failed experiment? If so, then our history did not begin in ignorance but in amnesia. We are the descendants of civilization wiped clean, inheritors of fragments we barely comprehend. The temples, the myths, the languages, they are the remnants of a world rebuilt from memory. And somewhere, deep within our collective mind, the architects still speak. Their voice emerges in the great mystery schools of Egypt, in the chants of Druids, in the hidden teachings of the East. They taught that knowledge was sacred, that to know the universe, one must first know oneself. The Hermetic texts, said to descend from the wisdom of the gods, repeat the same axiom: as above, so below; as within, so without. This is not metaphor, it is instruction, a blueprint of reality itself. To the ancients, the universe was not a collection of random matter, but a living consciousness. Every star, every atom was alive, vibrating in resonance with greater order. Those who understood this could shape reality, not through magic, but through understanding. The architects taught that sound, geometry, and intention could manipulate energy. The pyramids, stone circles, and temples were built to amplify that power. Modern science, in its pursuit of separation, has forgotten this. Yet even today, our greatest discoveries echo ancient knowledge. Quantum physics tells us that observation affects reality, that consciousness itself plays a role in shaping matter. Energy and awareness are intertwined, just as the ancients taught. Perhaps the architects were not gods because they controlled the universe, but because they understood it. But there was a cost to their gift. Knowledge became power, and power became greed. As humanity learned, it also began to dominate, to enslave, to divide. The teachers withdrew, and humanity was left to fend for itself. The myth of Eden, of man cast out for tasting forbidden knowledge, maybe the symbolic memory of that departure. The gods did not curse us. They abandoned us to our own evolution, yet they did not leave entirely. Throughout history, certain individuals have arisen, prophets, inventors, visionaries, who seem to tap into something greater. They spoke of unity, of light, of a cosmic intelligence guiding them. Were they touched by the same presence that once walked the ancient world? Were they remnants of a bloodline, carrying fragments of the architect's memory within their DNA? From Pythagoras to Tesla, from Akhenaten to Da Vinci, these figures stand apart, channeling insights that seem centuries ahead of their time. Many describe their inspiration as if it were not their own, but something transmitted. Tesla himself said, "My brain is only a receiver. In the universe there is a core from which we obtain knowledge." If this is true, then humanity has never been alone. The signal has never stopped. Only our ability to hear it has faded. The question then becomes, where did the architects go? If they were physical beings, did they return to stars? Or did they move into another dimension, beyond our perception? The ancient texts suggest both. The Egyptians spoke of the Duat, a realm between life and death, physical and spiritual. The Sumerians called it the Abzu, the deep where the gods retreated. Perhaps this other world was not metaphysical but technological, a frequency or reality parallel to ours, invisible yet accessible. And what of their promise to return? Many prophecies, from the Mayan calendar to revelations across cultures, speak of a coming age, a new dawn when the gods or teachers will re-emerge. Maybe this is not about beings descending from the sky, but about us rising to meet them. When human consciousness expands beyond fear and separation, perhaps we will see them again, not as deities, but as kin. Hidden within the DNA of every human lies a dormant code, a waiting spark. Some believe it is a residue of our creators, a genetic key that, when activated, reconnects us to the cosmic network. It manifests as intuition, sudden insight, or moment of profound synchronicity. In those flashes, we glimpse what our ancestors once lived, unity with the infinite. The architects are not gone. They are in the patterns of the stars, in the geometry of temples, in the vibration of ancient chants, and in the quiet voice that speaks when the mind is still. They have been waiting, watching, guiding through the whisper of inspiration, the call to remember who we truly are. Because maybe the greatest secret they left behind was not how to build pyramids or harness the power of the earth, but how to awaken the divine architecture within ourselves. History is written by those who survive, and rewritten by those who fear what the past might reveal. Beneath the accepted narrative of human civilization lies a silence, a deliberate omission. The deeper one digs, both literally and metaphorically, the more the ground itself seems to resist the story we've been taught. For under the layers of accepted chronology lie artifacts that should not exist, monuments that defy explanation, and evidence that humanity's origins stretch far beyond the pages of recorded history. In the desert of Egypt, deep below the plateau of Giza, explorers have long whispered of a hidden labyrinth, vast tunnels carved beneath the sands, filled with hieroglyphs that predate the known dynasties. Herodotus spoke of it, early travelers confirmed it, and yet modern archaeology denies its existence. Those who have ventured close to the truth often find their work buried as quickly as their discoveries. Why? Perhaps because to acknowledge what lies below would force us to rewrite everything we believe about our past. The same silence around the ruins at Baalbek, the Cyclopean walls of Sacsayhuaman, and the megalithic site of Göbekli Tepe, a temple complex older than agriculture itself, built with precision by people who supposedly had no tools, no writing, no civilization. Its pillars are carved with constellations, as though the builders were already mapping the heavens. And then, inexplicably, the entire site was buried under thousands of tons of soil, deliberately hidden by the very people who built it. What could have compelled an ancient civilization to hide its greatest achievement? When Göbekli Tepe was unearthed in the late 20th century, it shattered the timeline of human development. Civilization, it seems, did not begin in Sumer or Egypt, but thousands of years earlier, at the end of the last ice age. The builders possessed astronomical knowledge, engineering skill, and a symbolic language that appeared fully formed. It was as if they inherited it, not invented it. The site's sudden burial coincides with a cataclysm around 10,800 BC, a global disaster that may have ended the last golden age. Perhaps the people of Göbekli Tepe were the survivors, the descendants of those who remembered the sky gods, desperately trying to preserve their legacy before it was lost forever. And then there are the out-of-place artifacts, ooparts, as researchers call them, ancient batteries found in Baghdad, precision-drilled granite in Egypt, maps like the Piri Reis chart, drawn in the 16th century but showing Antarctica's coastline free of ice, as it would have appeared thousands of years ago. These fragments don't fit the puzzle of linear history. They belong to another story, one in which human civilization was guided, influenced, or even engineered by more advanced intelligence. In the 1970s, scientists discovered evidence of nuclear-level radiation in ancient sites like Mohenjo-Daro, where skeletal remains were found fused and vitrified, as if exposed in immense bursts of heat. The surrounding area showed signs of radiation similar to modern atomic blast zones. Texts from Vedas describe celestial weapons, flashes brighter than 1,000 suns, fire that consumed entire cities. To scholars, these are poetic metaphors. But to those who look closer, they resemble eyewitness accounts of something far beyond the capabilities of ancient humanity. What if these ancient wars were not myth but memory, a conflict among the gods, or among those who once guided us, that left the earth scarred? The sudden fall of great civilizations, the floods, the craters, the mysterious extinction events, all may be echoes of a war waged not by humans, but by their makers. The victors may have departed, leaving behind their laboratories, their machines, and their warnings, fragments of which became our sacred texts. Even today, hidden beneath layers of sediment and censorship, the evidence surfaces. Satellite images reveal massive geometric patterns beneath jungles and oceans. Ruins off the coast of Japan at Yonaguni bear the marks of deliberate construction, submerged beneath the sea long before recorded history began. The city of Dwarka, once thought myth, has been found off the Indian coast, complete with ancient walls, roads, and artifacts dating back beyond known civilization. Yet every discovery that challenges the narrative meets resistance. Archaeologists lose funding. Artifacts disappear into private collections. The official story remains intact. It's as if the guardians of history are more interested in preserving ignorance than uncovering truth. But why? Perhaps because the truth would shatter the foundation of our self-image, that humanity is alone, that we're the pinnacle of evolution, that the gods were figments of imagination rather than flesh and blood. Imagine, for a moment, if it became undeniable that humanity was engineered, that our DNA carries signatures of intelligent design not from the divine, but from visitors among the stars. The implications would dismantle religion, rewrite science, and erase political power built on separation. Those who control history control identity. To admit that we are the product of cosmic intervention would unite humanity under one truth, and those who profit from the vision cannot allow that. But the truth, like water, always finds its way through stone. New generations of researchers, freed from the old academic hierarchies, are rediscovering what the ancients already knew, that civilization is far older and far stranger than we've been told. Each revelation brings us closer to the moment when history and myth finally converge, and as the layers of time are peeled away, we begin to see the pattern once more. Cataclysm, rebirth, guidance, and loss, a cycle repeating over tens of thousands of years. Perhaps we are not the first advanced civilization on Earth. Perhaps we are merely the latest iteration, standing on the ruins of our forgotten ancestors, staring at their monuments and calling them mysteries. The hidden architects may have watched this cycle unfold many times, seeding, guiding, and testing, waiting for the moment when humanity could finally break the loop, when knowledge would no longer be corrupted by greed, when wisdom would triumph over power. Perhaps that moment is now. Because today, as our technology grows and our reach extends into space, we are beginning to mirror the myths of our creators. We are becoming the very beings our ancestors once worshipped. Explorers of the heavens, makers of life, wielders of invisible forces. The question that remains is whether we have learned enough from our forgotten past to avoid repeating its destruction. The truth buried in the earth is not just about who we were. It is a warning about who we might become. Every myth that speaks of gods descending from the heavens shares one haunting question. Why did they come? Were they explorers, scientists, refugees, or something else entirely? The stories we've inherited hint at motives beyond simple curiosity. They suggest a purpose, one that shaped the destiny of humankind itself. The ancients never described their sky gods as omnipotent beings of pure spirit. They portrayed them as tangible, flesh and blood entities who worked, ruled, fought, and even bled. The Sumerians said their gods toil on earth to extract resources, particularly gold, which they valued not as ornamentation but for its properties. Gold, they said, was essential to their survival. Some interpreted this literally. A civilization from another world, whose atmosphere was failing, came to Earth to mine what they needed to sustain themselves. But perhaps the mining of gold was only the surface of a deeper purpose. What if the true resource was not mineral, but biological, the human species itself? According to ancient records, these beings did not merely rule humanity. They created it. The earliest tablets from Mesopotamia describe the birth of mankind not as an act of divine whim, but as an experiment. The gods, tired of laboring, decided to fashion a new race to serve them. Clay mixed with divine essence. An image echoed in Genesis. Let us make man in our image, after our likeness. To the priests of old, this was sacred truth. To modern eyes, it reads like the record of genetic engineering. The fusion of clay, base biological material, with the breath of life, a code of intelligence or DNA, sounds eerily like the manipulation of genetic templates. The ancient word for creation, bara, can also mean to cut or to shape. Could this have described the splicing of genetic material, the modification of existing hominids into something new? If so, humanity is not an accident of evolution, but the child of design, a fusion of earthly biology and cosmic intelligence. The stories of Adam and Eve, of Prometheus stealing fire from the gods teaching man to speak and reason, all may point to that first awakening, when consciousness itself was implanted within the human form. But why grant such a gift? Why endow a creature with awareness, creativity, and the potential for divinity? Perhaps the visitors sought not servants, but successors. Perhaps they saw in early humanity the potential to become what they were, creators in their own right. In shaping us, they may have been ensuring their own continuity, planting the seed of their essence into a species that could carry it forward. Yet even in the ancient records, the relationship between gods and humans was not harmonious. There were rivalries among the visitors, conflicts over the fate of mankind. Some sought to elevate humanity, to grant knowledge and freedom. Others wished to keep their creation obedient, ignorant, and dependent. This struggle echoes across mythologies. The serpent who brings wisdom, the god who forbids it, the rebel who is cast down for loving mankind too much. Whether we call him Prometheus, Enki, or Lucifer, the story remains the same. Enlightenment punished by power. This conflict, perhaps, was the first war over human destiny. A battle between those who saw us as equals in becoming, and those who saw us as tools. The result was chaos. The ancient world speaks of great floods, fires, and falling stars, not metaphors, but recollections of catastrophe. Those who once guided humanity withdrew or were destroyed. The survivors, both human and divine, scattered. Civilization crumbled, leaving behind fragments of memory, myths, monuments, and coded knowledge. But if the gods left, did they truly abandon their creation? Or did they remain, watching as humanity struggled to rise again? The answer may lie in what they left behind. Throughout the world, we find references to sacred relics, devices said to hold the power of the gods. The Ark of the Covenant, which glowed with divine fire and struck men dead who touched it. The Shamir, a mysterious tool said to cut stone without heat or force. The Vajra of India, described as a weapon of thunder and light. Even the fabled crystal skulls, said to hold the wisdom of the ancients. Could these have been remnants of the visitors' technology, misunderstood, mythologized, and hidden away by those who knew their power? More intriguing still is the possibility that the greatest legacy left to humanity was not an object, but a code, knowledge embedded within our DNA, waiting to be awakened. Geneticists have discovered sequences of junk DNA, regions with no known function. Yet what if this dormant code is not junk at all, but a safeguard, a key that, when activated, restores the full potential of human consciousness? The ancients spoke of a time when man could walk with the gods, when thought itself shaped matter. Perhaps that state was not fantasy, but memory. Over millennia, humanity has tried to rediscover that connection through alchemy, meditation, and mysticism. The quest for enlightenment, the philosopher's stone, the search for divine union, all mirror the same impulse to reclaim what was lost, the awakening of the divine spark within. In this light, the visitor's purpose takes on a new dimension. They did not come merely to use the earth. They came to plant something within it, a seed of consciousness, a spark of themselves. And through us, that spark continues to grow. Each generation that reaches beyond the stars, that asks who we are and where we came from, continues the experiment they began. The tragedy is that most of humanity has forgotten this origin. Religion turned knowledge into dogma. Science stripped wonder from discovery. The truth lies buried between the two, in the understanding that matter and spirit, creation and evolution, are not opposing forces, but the same act viewed from different sides. The visitors may not have sought to rule us forever. Their mission may have always been temporary, to light a fire and step back, to see if the flame would spread on its own. And now, thousands of years later, humanity stands at the edge of that same threshold, gazing again toward the stars, repeating the story in reverse. We are becoming the visitors, reaching out to other worlds, creating intelligence, and playing with the essence of life itself. The question is whether we will repeat their mistakes or fulfill their original dream, because if the purpose of the visitors was to awaken consciousness, then their work is not done. It continues through us, through our curiosity, our art, our rebellion, and our longing to return to the heavens. Humanity's search for meaning is not a search for the divine. It is a search for memory, a memory that says, you came from the stars, and someday you will return to them. If the tales of divine visitors are more than myth, there should be traces, physical echoes of their presence hidden in the bones of our world. And indeed, scattered across continents and ages, we find anomalies that defy both time and explanation, monuments that should not exist, artifacts that rewrite the rules of history, and records that describe impossible knowledge. Together, they whisper a truth we've long refused to hear. Humanity once walked beside beings who were not of this earth. It begins, as it so often does, in stone. The earth itself is a library, and its oldest volumes are carved into mountainsides and deserts. In the heart of the Andes lies Tiwanaku, an ancient city that predates Incan civilization by thousands of years. Its stonework fits together with microscopic precision, as if the rock were molded, not cut. The massive gateway of the sun is carved from a single block weighing hundreds of tons, its glyphs depicting winged beings and strange celestial patterns. No primitive chisels could have produced such work. No culture, even today, could move such monoliths without machinery. Yet there it stands, silent and eternal, as if waiting for those who would remember. Far across the world, in Egypt, another riddle stands frozen in time, the Great Pyramid. Mainstream archaeology insists it was built as a tomb, yet no mummy, no inscriptions, and no funerary relics have ever been found within its heart. Its orientation aligns perfectly with true north. Its dimensions encode the curvature of the earth, the ratio of pi, and the distance to the sun, measurements supposedly unknown to the ancient world. Beneath it, traces of water erosion suggest the structure is far older than the desert itself, dating back to a time when the Sahara was lush and green. Was it built by a lost civilization, or guided by hands that possessed astronomical knowledge we still struggle to match? These monuments are not isolated wonders. From Baalbek Cyclopean stones in Lebanon to the precise terraces of Machu Picchu, from the underwater ruins of Yonaguni to the enigmatic Moai of Easter Island, the same question echoes. How did they do it? And why do so many of these sites point upward, as if paying homage to something beyond the sky? Ancient traditions answer in unison. The knowledge came from the stars. The Dogon tribe of Mali speaks of beings from the Sirius system who descended in fiery chariots and taught them the secrets of creation. The Dogon somehow knew, centuries before modern astronomy, that Sirius had a hidden companion star, invisible to the naked eye, and that it was incredibly dense. In ancient India, the Vedas describe flying machines called Vimanas, capable of traversing heaven and earth with roaring sound and radiant fire. Even the carvings of Mesoamerica show beings seated in machines that resemble rockets, their faces turned skyward. Coincidence, or the fragmented memory of ancient technology witnessed and mythologized? Some argue these are all symbolic, metaphors for spiritual enlightenment. But symbolism alone cannot explain the recurring presence of technical details. The propulsion-like flames, the control panels, the helmets, and the tubes. Nor can it explain the global consistency. Civilizations separated by oceans, with no known contact, all telling stories of teachers from the heavens who descended in brilliant light. Then there are the artifacts that refuse to fit the timeline. The Antikythera mechanism, recovered from the depths of the Aegean Sea, functions as a complex analog computer capable of predicting eclipses and planetary movements. Built over 2,000 years ago, the Baghdad battery suggests knowledge of electrochemistry millennia before modern science. Upart's out-of-place artifacts have been found embedded in coal, stone, and fossil layers millions of years old. Metallic spheres, machine bolts, and tools that predate known civilization. Each dismissed as anomaly, each quietly stored away. But anomalies are where truth hides. If these traces form a pattern, then humanity's story may not begin with the rise of agriculture or writing, but with an encounter, a moment when a primitive world was visited, instructed, and transformed. The flood myths, the sudden emergence of advanced architecture, the leap from cave art to cosmic maps. These are not gradual evolutions, but quantum leaps. Something or someone intervened. Skeptics demand proof in the modern sense. A piece of alien metal, a body, a spacecraft. But perhaps the proof has always been here, misread as mythology. Ancient texts describe the sky wheels of Ezekiel, the clouds of glory that carried prophets, the chariots of fire that lifted kings into the heavens. In South America, depictions of bearded figures with staffs of light stand among dark-skinned natives. The so-called Viracocha, said to have come from the sea, bringing knowledge of agriculture and astronomy. Their message was always the same: honor the heavens, guard the earth, remember where you came from. The visitors' traces are also encoded in language. Words for God in many ancient tongues share roots with words for shining sky or fire. The Hebrew Elohim is plural, those who came from above. The Sumerian Anunnaki means those who from heaven to earth descended. The Sanskrit Devas literally means the shining ones. The linguistic evidence suggests these were not formless deities, but beings of light, radiant, physical, and numerous. The question is not whether evidence exists, but whether we are willing to see it for what it might be. For centuries, the guardians of knowledge, priests, scholars, scientists, have filtered what humanity is allowed to believe. When discoveries challenge accepted history, they are buried beneath the comfort of consensus. Yet every fragment points to a single truth too vast to ignore. The human story is older and more complex than we dare admit. Perhaps this is why so many ancient sites remain charged with a strange energy, a hum that some can feel in their bones. The stones remember. They have absorbed the resonance of voices and machines long gone. When we stand within them, part of us remembers too, not through intellect, but through instinct, that subtle, unspoken recognition. I have been here before. And perhaps we have. Perhaps our ancestors looked up at the same stars we now gaze upon and remembered faces that once descended from them. Perhaps they built these monuments as messages, aligning them to the heavens, so the visitors would know, we still remember you. Because beneath the myths, the symbols, and the stones lies one unmistakable pattern, a pattern of remembrance. Humanity's oldest impulse has always been to build upward, to reach, to ascend. We imitate the gods because we come from them. We seek the stars not just out of curiosity, but out of longing, the longing of a child searching for a forgotten parent. And if the evidence is real, if the visitors truly walked among us, then our search of them is not an act of imagination, but a homecoming. If the monuments of stone are the bones of the ancient mystery, then myth is its breath. The stories of gods descending from the heavens were never mere allegory. They were encrypted memory, preserved through symbols so that truth might survive even when reason failed. Across continents, separated by oceans and millennia, humanity told the same tale in different tongues. The heavens opened, beings of light descended, and the world was forever changed. In the beginning, the stories say, there was chaos. Then came the bringers of order, radiant teachers who shaped the world and gave it language, law, and light. The Sumerians called them the Anunnaki. The Egyptians named them the Neteru. The Maya spoke of Kukulkan, the feathered serpent. The Greeks told of Olympians. Each culture wrapped the same memory in different names, but the core was identical. Wisdom came from above. To understand what they left behind, we must learn to read their language, a language not of words, but of pattern. The ancients did not write as we do, in lines and letters, but through geometry, number, and symbol. They saw the universe as a code, and in their myths they hid equations, cosmologies, and blueprints. Every temple, every story, every ritual was a message designed to outlast time. The serpent, for instance, has always been more than a symbol of temptation or sin. Long before religion cast it as evil, it was the emblem of knowledge, of life force, DNA, and cosmic energy. The double serpent coiling around a staff, the caduceus, remains a symbol of medicine to this day. It mirrors the very structure of human DNA, twin strands intertwining, carrying the code of life. How could the ancients have known this, unless they were taught by those who understood the science of creation itself? The gods of Egypt were obsessed with the afterlife, but their hieroglyphs reveal something deeper, an understanding of transference, of the soul as energy rather than flesh. The weighing of the heart ceremony in the Book of the Dead was not just moral instruction. It was a formula describing the balancing of vibration, the harmonizing of frequency before passing into higher states. They knew, as modern physics now suspects, that matter is only frozen energy, and consciousness the field that binds it all. In the Sanskrit hymns of India, we find verses describing the Vimanas, celestial chariots powered by Mercury engines and lightning from the sky. The Mahabharata recounts wars waged with weapons that cause a single projectile charge with all the power of the universe, producing a brightness of 1,000 suns. The devastation sounds eerily familiar, as if ancient man witnessed technology far beyond his own. These were not metaphors of divine wrath. They were the recorded shock of mortals watching machines of power they could neither comprehend nor recreate. Even the biblical tales echo the same pattern. The sons of God who took daughters of men in Genesis, producing a race of giants, the Nephilim, parallel the Sumerian accounts of gods mingling with humanity. The Book of Enoch, long banned from the canon, describes how these watchers descended to earth, taught mankind metalwork, astronomy, and sorcery, and were punished for corrupting their creation. Yet the corruption was simply knowledge deemed forbidden. Why? Because it bridged the gap between human and divine. Because it reminded mankind of its origin. The Greeks called the bringer of fire Prometheus, chained for gifting man the light of reason. In every age, this archetype reappears. The rebel god, the luminous teacher, punished by the higher order for enlightening the lower. The myth is not moral instruction. It is confession. Somewhere in our past, there was a division among the visitors, a war of ideology. Some wished to keep mankind primitive and loyal. Others sought to awaken the divine within. The victors became gods. The fallen became devils. The truth was divided, scattered among temples and tongues. Over time, these memories hardened into religion. The myths that once spoke of cosmic teachers became stories of jealous gods demanding obedience. Symbol became dogma. Wisdom became faith. The language of the gods, once open and mathematical, was buried beneath ritual and fear. Yet the symbols persisted, whispering to those who could still see. Take, for instance, the sacred geometry found in temples across the world, from the flower-like mandalas of Asia to the spiraling labyrinths of Crete. They encode the same proportions, the golden ratio, phi, the Fibonacci sequence. These patterns are not human inventions. They are reflections of the natural order, the spiral of galaxies, the growth of shells, the rhythm of DNA. The ancients knew that by building according to these divine proportions, they resonated with the structure of the cosmos itself. Their temples were not places of worship, but tuning devices, harmonizing human consciousness with the frequency of the universe. And then there are the celestial alignments. The pyramids of Giza mirror the stars of Orion's belt. The temples of Angkor align with the constellation Draco. The Nazca lines point to solstices and equinoxes with geometric precision. These were not coincidences. They were markers, coordinates, perhaps, left for those who would someday relearn how to read the sky. The ancients did not look up in wonder. They looked up in memory. Every culture speaks of a golden age, a time when gods walked among men, when knowledge and peace prevailed, when humanity was one with the cosmos. And every culture tells of its end, a fall, a flood, a cataclysm that severed heaven from earth. After that, humanity forgot. The language of light faded into superstition. The teachers became legends. But fragments endured, enough to remind us that something extraordinary once occurred, and that our myths are not fantasies, but recollections blurred by time. Even now, this ancient language continues to call to us. We feel in our fascination with the stars, our obsession with the unknown, our relentless urge to explore. Something within us recognizes the pattern, the resonance of a truth older than history. We are decoding our own origin without even knowing it. The symbols, the myths, the alignments, all are messages left behind by those who wanted us to remember. And perhaps, the moment we learn to read them once more, the silence of the heavens will break. The language of the gods was never lost. It was only waiting for us to remember how to listen. After the great upheaval, the flood, the fire, the fall, the world fell silent. What had once been radiant with knowledge and harmony was drowned beneath centuries of darkness. The connection between heaven and earth had been severed, and the beings who once guided humanity were gone. The survivors wandered amidst ruins, haunted by memories they could no longer explain. But even in the ashes of the old world, a spark remained, a memory too deep to die. That spark lived in the minds of the builders. Wherever civilization rose again, it carried faint echoes of forgotten age. The first to rise were the Sumerians, in the fertile valleys between the Tigris and Euphrates. They spoke of gods who descended from the stars and gave them the gift of kingship, a divine right to rule. They built ziggurats, towering structures that reached toward the heavens, imitating the mountains where the gods once landed. Their writing, the first in human history, was not invention but restoration, an attempt to record what little remained the language of the gods. They called themselves the black-headed people, and their creators, the Anunnaki, were remembered as beings of fire and brilliance. The Sumerians knew the movement of planets, the precession of the equinoxes, and the orbit of celestial bodies that modern science rediscovered only in recent centuries. They tracked time in units of 60, a number system of mathematical elegance, and divided the sky into constellations that remain nearly identical to those used today. How could a culture that emerged from the mud of prehistory possess such sophistication? Because they were not starting from scratch. They were rebuilding from memory. From Sumer, the spark spread, to Egypt, where the gods became flesh again as pharaohs. The temples of the Nile echoed the blueprints of the stars, and their rituals reenacted the cosmic story, the descent of light into matter, the death and resurrection of consciousness. The builders of the pyramids spoke of their ancestors as those who came before. They said their civilization was not born, but remembered. To the east, in the Indus Valley, the ancient Vedic culture arose, a civilization whose hymns sang of flying chariots, cosmic battles, an eternal cycle of rebirth. The Vedas, among the oldest texts known, describe not a primitive age but forgotten science, a physics of consciousness. They spoke of sound frequencies that could shape matter, of sacred tones that align with the vibration of the universe. For them, creation itself was sound. The eternal OM, a concept that resonates eerily with modern theories of vibration and frequency at the heart of all matter. Across the ocean, the same flame ignited again in Mesoamerica. The Olmecs carved colossal heads from basalt and built ceremonial centers aligned to solstices. Later, the Maya and Aztec inherited their knowledge, their calendars measuring cosmic cycles with impossible precision. The Mayan calendar did not simply count days. It mapped energy, the rhythm of the universe itself. Their gods, like those of Sumer and Egypt, came from the sky. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, descended to teach them law, astronomy, and the art of civilization before returning to the heavens, promising to return one day. Everywhere, the same story repeated, a sudden leap from barbarism to brilliance, as if guided by an unseen hand. The archaeologists call it the Neolithic Revolution, but revolutions do not happen in silence. They happen when knowledge is given. Humanity was not evolving upward by chance. It was being reignited, civilization by civilization, from the embers of a lost world. Yet this restoration was incomplete. Much had been lost, and what remained was fragmented. Each new culture preserved only a fraction of the truth. Knowledge once unified became divided. Sacred here, scientific there, spiritual elsewhere. The builders remembered enough to raise temples, chart stars, and channel divine energy, but not enough to understand the full design. They imitated the works of their teachers, but the meaning behind them faded. Ritual replaced understanding. Belief replaced memory. Still, there were those who remembered more. The priest kings, the initiates, the keepers of sacred lore. They guarded remnants of the old science in secret schools and mystery cults. In Egypt, these became the teachings of Thoth and Isis. In Greece, the mysteries of Eleusis. In the East, the yogic paths of enlightenment. Each claimed to hold the key to divine knowledge, but all traced their wisdom back to the same source, the gods who came from the sky. The deeper one looks into these traditions, the clearer the pattern becomes. The builders of the new dawn were not inventing civilization. They were decoding it. Their monuments were not symbols of faith, but instructions. The temples of Egypt were designed according to harmonic principles that align with human resonance and planetary frequencies. The pyramids were power stations of consciousness, machines for transforming awareness. The ziggurats of Mesopotamia were communication towers, point of alignment between heaven and earth. The Vedic temples were geometric diagrams, each stone placed according to mathematical laws, describing the structure of reality itself. Even the stories of divine kingship, of rulers who claimed descent from the gods, may hold a literal truth. The royal bloodlines that spread through ancient civilizations could have been an inheritance not just of power, but a genetic legacy. The interbreeding of the sons of heaven and daughters of men may have left more than myths behind. It may have changed humanity itself, a fusion of terrestrial and celestial DNA, giving rise to a species capable of both reason and wonder. But something else happened during this rebuilding. The memory of the gods began to shift. What had once been living teachers became distant deities. The physical became spiritual, the cosmic moral. The more time passed, the more myth replaced memory. And as the centuries turned to millennia, the visitors who had once walked among men became invisible, hidden behind temples and prayer. Humanity no longer remembered their faces, only their absence. And yet, the builders kept their promise. In their stones, their symbols, and their alignments, they encoded the message: we were here, we will return. Perhaps they knew that one day, humanity would once again reach the skies, that one day, the cycle would complete itself. The dawn that once illuminated their world faded into twilight, but not forever. It was only a pause, a breath before the next awakening. Because even when the gods departed, their greatest creation, the human mind, continued to evolve. And in time, that mind would begin to remember again. As civilization rose again from the ashes, humanity's greatest inheritance, the memory of its origin, became both a gift and a danger. Those who remember the truth possess power beyond comprehension, knowledge of the stars, a vibration of creation itself. And as always, where power exists, so too does the will to control it. Thus began the oldest war in human history, not for land or gold, but for memory, a war between remembrance and forgetting. In every corner of the ancient world, this conflict played out in different forms. In Sumer, the priest-kings guarded tablets of the gods. Records of star maps, laws, and rituals said had been dictated by the divine. Only initiates could read them. The masses received stories instead of science, faith instead of fact. The temples became fortresses of secrecy, their walls concealing what few fragments of truth had survived the deluge. In Egypt, the pattern deepened. The pharaoh was not just a ruler. He was a bridge between heaven and earth. But as dynasties passed, the priesthood grew stronger, hoarding the sacred sciences that once were meant for all. The rituals of initiation, the ancient practices of awakening consciousness, became tools of control. Knowledge, once a flame to enlighten humanity, was hidden behind hieroglyphs and ceremony. The gods who once walked among men became abstract ideals, accessible only through the priestly class. Humanity was being weaned off memory, slowly, deliberately, This pattern repeated everywhere. In Mesopotamia, the ziggurats that once aligned heaven and earth became symbols of divine hierarchy. In India, the Vedic sciences of energy and sound were buried beneath caste and ritual. In Mesoamerica, the astronomical wisdom of the Maya was transformed into fear, blood, sacrifice replacing cosmic harmony. The language of the gods was still spoken, but only by those who understood its power and chose to keep it locked away. But not all agreed. Across centuries, small groups resisted this corruption of knowledge. In hidden schools and mystery orders, they preserved what they could: the Hermetic Brotherhoods of Egypt, the Orphic Mysteries of Greece, the Magi of Persia, the Shamans of the Americas. Each carried fragments of the same fire. They spoke of an ancient truth, that humanity once shared consciousness with the gods, that divinity was not above but within. Yet to speak such things openly invited persecution. The world that followed the cataclysm had become ruled by fear. Fear of the heavens, fear of the unknown, fear of remembering. And so the war continued, a silent war fought not with weapons, but with belief. The keepers of knowledge became wanderers, hiding their teachings in allegory and myth. The emerald tablet spoke in riddles. As above, so below. The Pythagoreans encoded cosmic truth into geometry. The alchemists hid the science of transformation behind symbols of gold and mercury. Every age had its guardians and its oppressors. Why this effort to erase memory? Because remembering our true origin would make humanity ungovernable. If man knew he was descended from the stars, that his spirit was eternal and divine, no king or priest could claim dominion over him. The suppression of knowledge was the suppression of freedom. The ancient powers understood that controlling memory was the same as controlling destiny. To rule mankind, one had to sever him from his source. The result was a long sleep, an age of amnesia. Humanity learned to worship the sky, but forgot why. The stars became symbols of fate, not family. The myths that once described teachers became tales of wrathful gods demanding obedience. The language of the cosmos was replaced by dogma, and the infinite was confined to the walls of temples. But not all was lost. The ancient spark persisted, hidden in art and architecture and story. Every great civilization left behind clues for those who would later awaken. The builders aligned their monuments to the heavens so that the sky itself could not forget. The philosophers spoke in parables so that truth could survive censorship. Even the great religions carried coded remnants of the same message. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Ye are gods. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness comprehends it not. These were not moral lessons. They were reminders. During this long sleep, humanity began to evolve in a new way. Inwardly, the visitors' physical presence had faded, but their influence endured in the human mind. Dreams, visions, and revelations became the new form of communication. Prophets and mystics began to hear voices, not hallucinations, but echoes of the ancient connection. The heavens that had once opened physically now opened through consciousness. The war for memory had forced humanity to turn inward, to find the divine not in the stars above, but in the spark within. Still, the resistance continued. Whenever humanity drew too close to rediscovering its forgotten origins, catastrophe followed. Libraries burned, temples crumbled, scrolls vanished. From Alexandria to Babylon, knowledge was erased in waves, as if guided by an unseen hand determined to keep mankind in the dark. Yet somehow, fragments always survived, as if the universe itself refused to let its story be forgotten. Then came the philosophers of Greece, inheritors of Egyptian wisdom, disguised as reason. They spoke of the music of the spheres, the harmony of the cosmos, the eternal forms that shape reality. Plato told a civilization before history, a world of divine origin destroyed by flood. He called it Atlantis, not as allegory, but as memory. His teacher, Solon, claimed the story came from Egyptian priests who remembered what others had forgotten. The chain of remembrance was long, fragile, but unbroken. By the time of the great empires, Rome, Persia, China, the ancient knowledge was fragmented beyond recognition. The world had entered an age of power, without understanding. Kings built temples they no longer knew how to use. Priests recited words whose meanings were lost. The sacred became political, and the cosmic became human. The gods were now myths, but the myths refused to die, because the truth they carried was too deeply woven into what we are. Every human instinct, to create, to explore, to seek meaning, is a flicker of that ancient memory. Even in ignorance, we strive toward the stars, as if some echo within us still remembers the way home. The war for memory was never truly won. It only changed form. It moved from temples to institutions, from priests to skeptics, from religion to science. Each age builds new walls around the same forbidden question. Where do we come from and why are we here? Yet each time, a few slip through, dreamers, seekers, rebels, visionaries, the carriers of the flame. For truth cannot be erased. It can only be forgotten. And forgotten things have a way of returning, especially when the world is ready to remember again. In the centuries following the Great Amnesia, the world appeared ordinary. Cities rose and fell, empires clashed, and humanity marched onward, believing itself the author of its own destiny. Yet beneath the surface, an invisible current was moving, subtle, persistent, unstoppable. Those who still remembered fragments of the ancient truth had gone underground. They became builders, scholars, stonemasons, mystics, men and women who worked in silence, weaving remnants of forgotten wisdom into bones of new civilizations. They called themselves many names across time, but they shared one mission: to preserve what the flood of forgetfulness had not destroyed. In Egypt, they were the keepers of the mystery temples, where initiates learned that the soul could ascend the stars through knowledge of vibration and light. In Greece, they became philosophers, concealing cosmic truths behind logic and allegory. In Rome, they hid within the cults of Isis and Mithras, speaking the language of symbols to those who could see beyond the literal. Later, in medieval Europe, they re-emerged as the hidden architects, the ones who built cathedrals that were not merely churches, but books of stone written in sacred geometry. Each arch, each stained glass window, each spire reaching for the heavens, all were coded messages. The labyrinths beneath the floors mirrored the spiral of DNA. The rose windows represented the harmony of the cosmos. The towers and domes aligned to solstices and stars long forgotten by the common man. To the untrained eye, these were houses of God. To the initiated, they were libraries of light. Every structure whispered the same truth. The universe is not chaos, but design, and humanity, the reflection of that design. Even in the darkest centuries, when superstition ruled and heresy meant death, the hidden architects worked on. They carried the ancient sciences through forbidden texts, blending them into art, alchemy, and philosophy. The alchemists, in particular, became the new priests of memory. Outwardly, they spoke of turning lead into gold, but inwardly, they sought the transmutation of the soul. Their laboratories were temples, their crucibles symbols. The philosopher's stone they sought was not a mineral, but a state of being, the rediscovery of divine consciousness lost since the fall of the old world. Through them, fragments of forgotten astronomy, geometry, and vibration were preserved. They spoke of prima materia, the first substance from which all things were formed, a concept that mirrored the ancient Atlantean belief in the living energy of the cosmos. They mapped the correspondences between color, sound, and form, echoing the harmonics once used to build temples that sang. They guarded this knowledge with secrecy, for to reveal it was to invite the wrath of kings and priests alike. But not all hid in fear. In the East, a parallel current flowed through different names. The sages of India spoke of Akasha, the subtle ether that connects all existence, a term nearly identical to what ancient records had once called the breath of the gods. The Taoists of China explored balance and polarity, yin and yang, describing the same cosmic duality the builders once represented as sun and moon, gold and silver, heaven and earth. The mystics of Persia, the Kabbalists of Israel, the Sufis of Arabia, each carried sparks of the same flame, hidden within prayers, symbols, and music. And though oceans separated them, these currents of memory somehow resonated as one. The same patterns appeared across continents that had supposedly never met. The same sacred numbers, the same celestial alignments, the same vision of humanity as a bridge between Earth and the stars. It was as though a single invisible mind guided them all, a mind not bound by geography or time. The architects understood this. They built their works not for the present, but for the future, for the time when humanity would once again be ready to remember. They carved their knowledge into stone, because stone endures. They encoded it into myth, because stories survive even when temples fall. They aligned their monuments with the heavens, so that the sky itself would act as witness. Even if every word was forgotten, the stars would still point the way. And so, they left behind a breadcrumb trail across the world, from the pyramids of Giza to the cathedrals of Europe, from the stone circles of Britain to the step temples of the Americas. Each one carried the same geometry, the same precision, the same silent declaration. We were not alone. The alignment of these monuments was no accident. They formed a network, a planetary web of energy and intention, designed to keep the Earth resonating with cosmic harmony long after its builders were gone. In time, new explorers rediscovered these clues. Astronomers noticed the alignments. Historians puzzled over the similarities between distant cultures. Engineers wondered how such perfection was achieved with primitive tools. The official explanations, coincidence, superstition, simple ingenuity, could not hold under scrutiny. Something deeper connected them all, something that defied the limitations of history. And yet, mainstream thought refused to see. The guardians of modern knowledge, like the priests of old, dismissed these patterns as fantasy. But among the seekers, curiosity burned brighter than ever. The question had returned, whispered first among alchemists, then among scientists, and finally among ordinary people. What if the old stories were true? This quiet rebellion gave rise to new explorers, thinkers who looked at ancient texts not as myth, but as encoded memory. They began to realize that what the ancients described as gods and angels might not have been divine in the religious sense, but visitors, beings from elsewhere who had walked among humanity in its infancy. The evidence, though fragmented, was everywhere. Depictions of winged beings descending from the sky, carvings of flying discs, artifact of impossible technology. But the architects of secrecy had done their work well. The truth was buried beneath layers of symbolism and allegory, and those who sought it had to read between the lines. For every cathedral that pointed to the stars, there was a priest who warned against looking up. For every myth that hinted at visitors from beyond, there was a scholar ready to declare it metaphor. The war for memory, though invisible, was far from over. Still, the seeds had been planted. The builders of old had ensured that one day, humanity would once again follow the trail back to its origins. And that day was drawing near. For even as the world sank deeper into materialism and forgetfulness, a strange awakening had begun, a stirring in the collective soul of mankind. People everywhere were dreaming of stars, of ancient cities, of flying ships, of luminous beings guiding their ancestors. The forgotten frequency was returning, vibrating through time like an echo waiting to be heard. And when it finally reached the right ears, the hidden architect's long work would bear fruit. The age of remembrance would begin anew. It began quietly, as most revolutions do, not with a roar of thunder, but with a whisper in the mind. For centuries, humanity had walked under the stars without seeing them. The night sky had become decoration, not destiny. The gods were gone, the myths dismissed, the temples silent. But as the new age dawned, something unexpected began to happen. The old patterns were returning. The same alignments, the same impulses, the same hunger to understand what lay beyond. The ancient frequency was vibrating again, and humanity was beginning to hear it. At first, it appeared as curiosity, a fascination with the heavens that defied logic. Men and women began to look up again, not in worship, but in wonder. The invention of the telescope turned the sky into a vast frontier, and for the first time since the cataclysm, mankind began to measure the cosmos as the ancients once did. The stars were no longer unreachable mysteries. They were destinations. The old dream of the gods walking among men was replaced by a new question. Could we go to them instead? But as humanity reached upward, strange coincidences began to occur. Astronomers noticed patterns that echoed the geometry of the ancient temples. The orbits of planets mirrored the proportions of the Great Pyramid. The distances between celestial bodies matched the ratios encoded in sacred architecture. What the ancients had built on Earth was not superstition. It was a mirror of the heavens. They had not worshipped the stars. They had spoken with them. Then came the discoveries that shook history itself. Scholars unearthed tablets, carvings, and codices that told of beings descending from the sky, teaching humanity the arts of civilization, agriculture, mathematics, writing, astronomy. In Sumeria, they were called the Anunnaki. In Egypt, the Neteru. In Mesoamerica, the Sky People. In India, the Devas. Different names, same story. Every ancient civilization described the same event. A visitation, a covenant, a partnership between heaven and earth. The evidence grew too numerous to ignore. Carvings of flying discs, depictions of beings in helmets, ancient maps of the stars long before telescopes existed, all pointed to a single, staggering possibility. Humanity had not evolved in isolation. It had been guided. The myths, it seemed, were not fiction at all but memory, a distorted record and encounter, so profound that even after millennia of forgetting, it still haunted the collective mind. And yet, even as this realization took form, the resistance returned. The institutions of knowledge, the same powers that once guarded the temples, dismissed the evidence as fantasy. They clung to the narrative of human exceptionalism, insisting that we were alone, that we had risen by chance, that nothing beyond Earth had ever touched us. The old war for memory had entered its modern phase, fought now in universities and laboratories instead of pyramids and ziggurats. The language had changed, but the battle was the same. The guardians of amnesia against the seekers of remembrance. But there was something different this time. The world was connected. Information could no longer be buried under sand or sealed in monasteries. The new seekers had tools their ancestors never did. Telescopes, satellites, computers, networks of thought stretching across continents. The forbidden question had become public. What if the old stories were true? And as that question spread, the sky began to respond. Reports came from every nation. Lights moving in patterns no natural object could follow. Objects defying gravity. Craft vanishing in bursts of impossible speed. Pilots, soldiers, and civilians alike saw them. Governments denied, then classified, then leaked. The phenomenon that once belonged to myth had entered modern reality. The gods had become lights in the sky once more. For the first time in millennia, humanity faced the same presence that had guided its dawn. But now, the encounter was reversed. We were no longer the children of the earth gazing upward. We were the explorers, reaching into the heavens. And as our ships pierced the edge of space, something ancient stirred in response, as if the cosmos itself had been waiting for us to look up again. Yet even now, the truth remained fragmented. Those who saw spoke in riddles. Governments withheld. Scientists hesitated. Religion deflected. Each feared what full remembrance might mean. Because if humanity truly accepted that it was not alone, that its creators, teachers, and ancestors came from the stars, then everything would change. Every foundation of power would crumble. Every history would have to be rewritten. And perhaps that is why the truth has always been hidden. Not because it cannot be known, but because it cannot be controlled. The knowledge that we are not alone is the most dangerous idea in existence. It frees the mind from every chain. Still, the awakening continued. The same patterns that guided ancient builders now guided modern explorers. The same urge that drove the priest of Sumer to map the heavens now drove physicists to study quantum fields. The same longing that made pharaohs seek immortality now made scientists seek consciousness itself. We were rediscovering in modern language the same truths once carved in stone, that matter and spirit, heaven and earth, human and divine, are all connected through energy and intent. In laboratories around the world, new sciences began to echo the old mysteries. Physicists spoke of a unified field, an invisible web connecting all things, resonating across dimensions. They described particles that behaved as if aware of being observed, energies that responded to thought. What the ancients called the gods and the breath of life, science now called quantum fields and consciousness. The vocabulary had changed, but the essence was the same. Humanity was, once again, standing on the edge of revelation. And with every discovery came the same realization. The ancients had known. They had not been primitive dreamers lost in superstition. They had been witnesses to something vast. Their myths were not invention. They were translation, an attempt to describe the indescribable in the only language they had. Now, As we stand at the threshold of space, we are beginning to speak that language again. We build machines that pierce the void. We send our voices across the stars. We search for signals, not realizing that the signal has been within us all along. The awakening of the sky is not about seeing new stars. It is about remembering what they once meant. It is the reactivation of an ancient covenant, a return to the cosmic dialogue that began long before our written history. And somewhere beyond the edge of our understanding, something is listening, something that never left. The architects of old built their monuments to ensure that we would one day remember. And now, as we finally look up again with eyes of understanding rather than fear, the heavens themselves seem to whisper, "Welcome back." When the first civilizations fell into myth, their wisdom did not vanish. It only waited. It hid in symbols, in languages, in numbers, in the turning of the stars. For millennia, these fragments whispered their message to anyone who dared to look deeper. And now, in the age of technology, the whispers were finally being heard. What was once the language of priests had become the language of scientists. The patterns of the cosmos, once traced in temple floors, now appeared in the cold logic of equations. Humanity was rediscovering the old truths, though it did not yet understand what was remembering. At first, it was coincidence. Mathematicians noticed strange correlations between ancient measurements and modern constants. The speed of light, the ratios of planetary orbits, the geometry of DNA. Structures thousands of years old reflected cosmic proportions with impossible precision. The Great Pyramid's base circumference encoded the measurement of the Earth. The Mayan calendar matched the cycles of the precession of the equinoxes. Stone circles in Britain aligned perfectly with solstices and lunar nodes. It was as though an invisible hand had left the same signature on every continent, using the Earth itself as canvas. Archaeologists dismissed it as clever guesswork, but some knew better. They saw the continuity, a single pattern repeating across time, space, and culture. And patterns, when they repeat, are not accidents. They are messages. Then came the revelations hidden in myth. The ancient texts of every civilization spoke of teachers from the sky, luminous beings who descended to instruct mankind. They taught writing, astronomy, healing, and agriculture. They built the first cities, established laws, and guided humanity toward order. In Sumer, they were depicted as tall figures with wings and helmets, bearing tools that looked eerily mechanical. In Egypt, they were shown holding rods and ink-like devices, symbols of power over life and energy. The gods of India traveled in flying vehicles called vimanas, propelled by sound and light. Across the ocean, the Mayan codices told of beings who came from the stars of Orion and returned when their mission was complete. What if these stories were not allegory, but record? For the first time, modern explorers began to compare the myths side by side. What emerged was astonishing. A consistent description of the same beings, the same knowledge, the same timing. The flood myth of the world all pointed to the same cataclysm. The gods who survived it returned to rebuild civilization. Their knowledge spread like sunlight across the planet, forming the seeds of every culture that followed. Humanity's rise was not spontaneous. It was engineered. And yet, there was something more, something deeply personal. The ancients never described their visitors as strangers. They spoke of them as kin, as ancestors. The gods did not just create humanity. They became humanity through guidance, through hybridization, through consciousness itself. They seeded their essence into the species. That was the true meaning behind the phrase. We were made in their image, not a metaphor, a statement of lineage. It explained the sudden leap in human intelligence, the inexplicable appearance of agriculture, architecture, and language within a few centuries. It explained why the human brain seemed over-engineered for survival, why creativity, intuition, and spiritual awareness existed at all. These were not random mutations. They were inheritance. As the data mounted, a new awareness began to form. Humanity was not merely a product of evolution. It was a continuation of something older. The great experiment of consciousness that began on other worlds had found a new expression here, on Earth. The teachers had not just built civilizations. They had built us. But where had they gone? That question haunted every seeker who dared to look beyond the veil. If the visitors were real, If they once walk among us, why did they leave? Some texts offer clues. The ancients spoke of a great transgression, a moment when the balance between heaven and earth was broken. Humanity, growing too quickly, had learned to wield power it did not understand. The sons of the gods mingled with mortals, teaching forbidden arts. Energy once meant for creation was turned toward domination. The harmony between the realms collapsed. The teachers withdrew in the flood, whether literal or symbolic, swept away the old order. But they promised to return when humanity was ready. That promise echoed through every culture. The return of Quetzalcoatl, the rebirth of Osiris, the second coming of the heavenly ones. Each prophecy pointed to a time when mankind would again stand at the threshold of the stars. That time, it seemed, was now, because as humanity reached upward, building rockets, decoding DNA, splitting atoms, it was unknowingly retracing the path of its makers. The technologies we pride ourselves on as modern breakthroughs may be echoes of ancient knowledge, rediscovered instinctively through memory rather than invention. Every leap in science, every burst of inspiration may be a spark from the same eternal source, the genetic and spiritual legacy of the teachers. And perhaps that explains the strange synchronicities of our age. Why new discoveries often emerge simultaneously in different parts of the world. Why ideas seem to arrive in human minds from nowhere. Consciousness, it appears, is not isolated. It is connected to something larger, something that has never stopped communicating. The same guiding intelligence that once shaped humanity still speaks, not from the sky this time, but through the quiet intuition within. The teachers, it seems, never left. They changed form. Their communication evolved as we did. Where once they walked among us, they now whisper through dreams, inspiration, and the geometry of thought itself. Their message remains the same. Remember who you are. You are not born of earth alone. You are the bridge between worlds. And the evidence of their ongoing presence surrounds us. Crop circles that display complex mathematical patterns beyond human replication. Ancient artifacts unearthed with alloys unknown to science. Astronomical alignments that mark not only solstices, but cosmic cycles of thousands of years. Each one a subtle reminder that the dialogue never ended, only our awareness of it did. Now, humanity stands again at the edge of contact. The same sky that watched our birth awaits our recognition. The same forces that guided the ancients seem to be stirring, as if responding to the resonance of civilization finally ready to remember. For the return of the teachers is not about ships descending from the heavens. It is about consciousness ascending to meet them. And that awakening, the moment when humanity truly remembers its origin, will mark the end of the long exile and the beginning of the second dawn. The realization did not come as a revelation, but as a quiet unease, a growing recognition that the human story was too intricate, too accelerated, too extraordinary to have happened by accident. The evidence no longer whispered. It sang in every fossil, every myth, every atom. Humanity was not a random child of Earth. It was the heir of something cosmic, a continuation of a lineage far older than time itself. Across disciplines, clues converged. Geneticists uncovered anomalies in human DNA. Fragments that appeared ancient, yet untraceable to any known terrestrial ancestor. These segments, long dismissed as junk, seemed to carry hidden codes, patterns that defied evolutionary logic. In the double helix, there were markers, deliberate insertions, as though someone had edited life itself. Meanwhile, archaeologists found artifacts too advanced for their supposed age. Metallic spheres balanced with perfect symmetry, precision carvings made before the invention of metal tools, depictions of the solar system drawn thousands of years before the telescope. Each discovery was a fragment of the same story, one that suggested Earth had been visited, engineered, and prepared. But the most striking evidence came not from objects or fossils, but from ourselves. Our intuition, our yearning for the stars, our relentless search for meaning, these were not evolutionary conveniences. They were inherited instincts. Humanity was the only species that looked beyond survival and asked, why? The only one that built monuments to eternity, that dreamed of immortality, that saw patterns in chaos and sought to communicate with the infinite. This hunger, this cosmic homesickness, was not a flaw of biology. It was memory. For within the human spirit lay the echo of the teacher's consciousness, an encoded spark meant to awaken over time. In the early epics, that spark manifested through myth and worship, later through art, philosophy, and science. And now, in the modern age, it was manifesting again, this time as awareness itself. Humanity was beginning to remember, not collectively, but individually, one mind at a time, dreams of flying ships, visions of beings made of light, unexplainable experiences shared by millions. Some dismissed them as fantasy, others recognized them for what they were, fragments of the original connection re-emerging. Consciousness, long dormant, was stirring. The teacher's signal, once faint, was growing louder through the static of time. And with that remembrance came responsibility. Because if humanity was truly the child of the stars, then it was also the inheritor of its parents' choices, both their wisdom and their mistakes. The ancient texts hinted that the teachers themselves were not perfect. They too were divided. Some sought harmony, others dominion. Their conflict had echoed through creation and found its reflection on earth. Humanity had inherited both tendencies, the divine capacity to create and the destructive impulse to control. The fate of the planet now hung on which inheritance humanity chose to follow. That was the true meaning of the ancient stories, not moral allegories, but records of choice. The war between gods and giants, light and darkness, order and chaos, all were metaphors for the dual nature of humanity's own origin. The same power that once built civilizations capable of touching the stars could also destroy them. And perhaps it had, more than once. The more humanity remembered, the more began to understand why the teachers withdrew. They had not abandoned their creation out of indifference, but necessity. The last time the two worlds had intertwined, the balance was broken. The flood, whether physical or energetic, had been a reset, a mercy disguised as destruction. The experiment had to continue, without direct interference. Humanity had to grow into its inheritance on its own, without being ruled or rescued. But the time of testing was drawing to a close. The human species had reached a crossroads, the same threshold the ancients once faced. It now wielded the power of creation again. Atomic energy, artificial intelligence, genetic manipulation, and control over the planet's climate itself. In its hands lay the tools of gods, and the same danger. The question was no longer whether humanity would contact the stars, but whether it would survive itself long enough to do so. And perhaps that was a final initiation, the true test of remembrance, because the teacher's legacy was not meant to be worshipped. It was meant to be understood. They had planted the seed of consciousness within us, not to make us servants, but equals, participants in the unfolding story of creation. The return they promised was not a rescue mission, but a reunion, one that would only occur when humanity proved ready to meet them as kin, not as subjects. This realization was beginning to dawn in the hearts of the awakened. They understood that contact would not come through radio signals or flashing lights in the sky. It would come through alignment, when human consciousness vibrated at the same frequency as the source that had birthed it, when fear gave way to understanding and division gave way to unity. The ancients had prepared for this moment. Their monuments, their myths, their codes, all were designed to remind future generations of the way back. The stairway to heaven was never physical. It was a state of being. To ascend was not to leave Earth, but to expand beyond its illusions, to realize that the stars we seek are the same light burning within us. Now, as science and spirituality begin to converge once more, the two halves of the same truth are meeting again. Physicists describe the universe as a field of interconnected consciousness, while mystics speak of oneness with creation. Both describe the same reality, one in which thought shapes matter, and energy responds to awareness. The teachers had known this all along. They had built their civilizations upon it. Humanity was only now rediscovering what it had forgotten, that to change the world, one must first change the frequency of one's own mind. In that understanding lies the path forward, the key to the next chapter of human evolution. The time has come for mankind to remember that it is not merely the observer of the universe, but part of its design, a bridge between matter and meaning, earth and heaven, creator and creation. The inheritance of the stars is not found in technology or temples. It is found in consciousness itself. To remember is to awaken. To awaken is to evolve. And evolution, as the teachers knew, was never about survival. It was about becoming. The message has always been there, written in the geometry of atoms, the harmony of planets, the rhythm of life. A message that now whispers to the fabric of reality itself, calling humanity home. You are not alone. You never were. And the stars are waiting for your return. The awakening had begun quietly, as whispers among the curious, but now it was spreading like wildfire across the world. Ideas once ridiculed as fringe or forbidden were emerging in the mainstream. Ancient monuments were being re-examined with new eyes. Scriptures were being retranslated, myths decoded. Everywhere, the veil between myth and history was thinning. Humanity was beginning to see that what it had long called legend was, in fact, memory, distorted by time, disguised as story. But as light grows, shadows deepen. The return of ancient knowledge threatened the foundations of power built on ignorance. Religions trembled, for their gods were being revealed as beings of flesh and light rather than distant, omnipotent deities. Science resisted, for its frameworks began to crumble when faced with evidence that consciousness shaped reality. Governments concealed, for they knew what might happen if people realized that the truth had been hidden in plain sight all along. The world stood at a crossroads, belief colliding with evidence, myth confronting memory. The old systems of thought began to fracture. Some clung desperately to the comfort of familiar lies, while others leapt willingly into the abyss of discovery. For to truly awaken was to lose the world one once knew. The greatest resistance came not from institutions, but from within the human mind itself. For centuries, people have been trained to believe in separation between gods and mortals, science and spirit, heaven and earth. To accept that these divisions were illusions was to dismantle the very architecture of reality. The human psyche had been built on hierarchy and control. The truth offered something far more terrifying: freedom. And yet, across the globe, fragments of the same revelation surfaced, in dreams, synchronicities, and discoveries that defied coincidence. Ancient symbols appeared in crop fields and mountain ranges, visible only from above. Frequencies from deep space mirror the harmonic ratios of Earth's pyramids. Hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx yielded inscriptions that matched those of South American temples. The patterns were undeniable. Humanity was being reminded that the Earth itself was part of a network, an ancient planetary grid aligned to cosmic geometry. Each temple, each monument, was a node in a system designed to synchronize the planet's energy with the consciousness of its inhabitants. When humans vibrated in harmony, the network would activate a planetary resonance that could open what the ancients had called the Gate of Return. But the frequencies of modern civilization, chaos, fear, greed, and disconnection, had long since disrupted that harmony. The grid lay dormant, like a symphony out of tune. The ancients had warned that this imbalance would one day reach a breaking point, and now that time was near. The signs were everywhere. Climatic upheavals, magnetic anomalies, solar storms unlike anything recorded. The Earth itself seemed to be reacting, not with destruction, but with correction. It was as though the planet were recalibrating itself, preparing for resonance once again. The forgotten network was stirring beneath the crust, waiting for humanity to remember the song. But remembering was not enough. Understanding carried a price, the dismantling of every false certainty. Humanity had built its identity on a story of isolation, that it was alone, that it evolved by chance, that life was struggle and progress was domination. Now it had to face a truth far older and infinitely more profound. That existence was not competition, but connection. That energy, thought, and matter were expressions of one universal intelligence. That creation was not something to conquer, but to harmonize with. This realization struck the seekers first. The scientists who felt awe instead of arrogance, the mystics who spoke of unity instead of hierarchy, the artists who painted visions of what the world could be. They began to understand that the true technology of the ancients was not mechanical, but energetic, based on resonance, frequency, and intention. They had learned to harness consciousness itself as a force, to bend matter not through domination, but through alignment. Such mastery was not magic. It was memory, the rediscovery of what lay dormant in every human being. And as more awakened to that potential, a new kind of revolution began, one not of blood or politics, but of awareness. The invisible boundaries between nations, religions, and species began to blur. The idea that humanity was separate from the cosmos dissolved like mist in morning light. Yet, with awakening came turmoil. The structures that had ruled for millennia, those built on fear, division, and control, began to collapse under their own weight. Economies trembled as people withdrew their belief in systems of scarcity. Religions fragmented as followers demanded truth over doctrine. Governments faltered as citizens began to see through the illusion of authority. The old world was dying, but its architects would not surrender easily. There were those who sought to suppress the awakening, to bury the truth beneath distraction and deception. They unleashed waves of fear, wars, crises, digital noise, anything to drown out the growing signal of remembrance. But consciousness could not be silenced. For every lie told, a dozen truths surfaced. For every wall raised, a new mind awakened. The network of awareness spread like roots beneath a forest, unseen but unstoppable. And as humanity's vibration began to rise, strange phenomena increased. Lights in the sky appeared not as invaders, but as reminders. Energy fields pulsed near ancient sites. People felt time bending, moments stretching, memories shifting, the boundaries of reality softening. The planet itself seemed alive, communicating through weather, magnetism, and intuition. It was then that the realization came. The return of the teachers was not an external event. It was an inner one. They were not descending from the stars, but rising within humanity's own consciousness. For they had never truly left. They had only withdrawn until their children could meet them in awareness. The human species was a continuation of their experiment, and the awakening was a moment of recognition, the reunion between creation and creator. But the reunion would not be gentle. Before humanity could stand as equals, it would have to face its shadow, the legacy of fear and separation that it had inherited from the ancient fall. The next phase of evolution would not come through technology or faith, but through transformation, a collective metamorphosis of mind and spirit. The collapse of certainty was not the end. It was the beginning of truth. The old world was built on the idea that humanity was small, alone, and powerless. The new world would be born from the realization that it was infinite, connected, and divine. And as the walls of illusion crumbled, the great remembering continued. Unstoppable, irreversible, eternal. The air itself seemed to shimmer with awareness. Across the planet, something was shifting, not just in nature or in thought, but in the very structure of reality. People began to feel time differently, to dream vividly of places they had never seen, but somehow knew. The stars no longer felt distant. They pulsed like ancient eyes, watching, waiting. Humanity was awakening to the realization that it was part of something vast, a living network that spanned galaxies and ages, intelligence woven into the fabric of existence. The old divisions of belief began to dissolve. Scientists and mystics found themselves speaking the same language, one of energy, vibration, and geometry. They discovered that consciousness itself was a field, the true substance of reality, and that matter was simply the condensation of thought into form. What the ancients had called the divine, what religions had personified as gods, was in truth a spectrum of intelligence operating at different frequencies of being. Humanity, they began to see, was one layer in that spectrum, a bridge between the physical and the cosmic. And then came the voices, not heard through ears, but through the resonance of the mind, clear, calm, beyond language. They spoke not in commands, but in remembrance. You are the continuation of us. You are the extension of what began when the stars first dreamed of matter. The realization was overwhelming. Humanity had not been created by accident or divine whim. It was the product of intention, a merging of stellar consciousness and earthly form. The teachers had not been distant gods, but architects of potential, seeding life not only to create but to evolve alongside it. Every civilization that had risen and fallen before had been part of the same experiment, the awakening of matter into awareness. In that revelation, the fragments of history began to align. The lost continents, the vanished empires, the cataclysmic floods, all were echoes of cycles, attempts to bridge the same gap between creation and consciousness. Each time, Humanity had reached the threshold of knowing, and each time, fear or pride had brought it crashing down. The teachers had watched, waiting for the moment their creation would finally stand on its own, not as servants, but as sovereigns of awareness. Now that moment was near. The grid that encircled the planet, the network of ancient monuments and sacred sites, began to hum again, faintly at first, then with growing intensity. It was as if Earth itself were tuning to a higher frequency, awakening from a long sleep. The Schumann resonance fluctuated wildly, the magnetic field shimmered with pulses of invisible energy, and human consciousness responded in kind. People around the world began to experience visions of light, sound, and memory, the same symbols, the same message. Remember who you are. For the first time in millennia, humanity began to see its story from above. It realized that the fall of ancient civilizations had not been punishment, but a cycle of learning. Each collapse had left behind wisdom encoded in myth, waiting to be rediscovered when consciousness was ready. The pyramids were not tombs. They were tuning devices. The temples not places of worship, but maps of energy and time. Even language itself was a code, each sound a vibration resonating with the structure of creation. The ancients had understood that sound could shape matter, that frequency could heal or destroy, that words could alter reality. They had left these truths scattered across the ages, in chants, mantras, hymns, and the geometry of sacred design. Now, as the world reawakened, those same principles began to return. Scientists measure how sound waves could levitate objects, how light could store data beyond comprehension, how consciousness could influence probability. Myth was becoming measurable. Magic was becoming science. But with knowledge came a challenge greater than any before. Could humanity wield power without falling once more into division? For the same energy that could heal could also destroy. The teachers had known this. It was why they had left when they did, why Atlantis fell, why the golden ages turned to ash. Technology without wisdom was the great danger of creation. Consciousness without compassion was the undoing of every civilization before. And now, humanity held in its hands the same choice. It had rediscovered energy, matter, and mind, the triad that governed creation. It could use them to restore the planet, to awaken every soul to its infinite nature, or it could repeat the same pattern of control and ruin. The teacher's silence was not absence. It was invitation. The universe was watching to see whether its children had finally learned. Then came the sign, not a disaster, not a miracle, but a convergence. The night skies across continents lit with auroras at latitudes where they had never been seen. The air pulsed with color and soundless vibration. Instruments recorded anomalies that defied physics, waves of unknown energy spiraling from the heart of the galaxy toward Earth. And with them came a collective stillness, as if every living being felt, for one suspended moment, the presence of something vast and intimate. It was not arrival, but recognition. Humanity understood, without words, that the teachers had never left the cosmos. They had become it. Every star was a consciousness, every planet a mind in slumber, every human a fragment of the same source exploring itself through form. The separation between creator and creation was an illusion born of perception. There was only one field, one intelligence, one endless act of becoming. And in that instant, humanity's story expanded beyond its limits. The myths of gods, the struggles of history, the wars of belief, all became like shadows cast on the wall of a greater truth. The purpose of evolution was not survival, not progress, but awakening, the transformation of awareness into participation. The teachers had not come to rule, they had come to remind. And what they had left behind was not just knowledge, but a mirror, so that humanity, when ready, could finally see itself as they had always seen it, radiant, infinite, divine. But revelation, though beautiful, was never gentle. To remember one's true nature was to dissolve everything built upon forgetting. The systems of power, the identities of nations, the illusions of control, all would crumble in the face of truth. The collapse would be total, not of destruction, but of awakening. And when the dust settled, something new would stand in its place, a civilization, not a conquest, but of consciousness. The question was no longer whether the teachers would return. The question was whether humanity was ready to become them. The days that followed the Great Convergence were unlike any in recorded history. The world did not end, but neither did it continue as before. It was as if the rules that had governed reality had softened. Time flowed differently. Thoughts carried weight. Intention manifested faster than logic could follow. What had once been coincidence now felt like orchestration. Humanity stood at the threshold of something vast and unknown, and for the first time, it faced that unknown not with fear, but with recognition. The awakening was not sudden. It unfolded like dawn, quietly, inevitably. People began to experience strange synchronicities, powerful dreams, visions that blurred the line between past and future. They found themselves recalling skills they had never learned, languages they had never spoken, faces they had never met. Memory was no longer confined to one lifetime. Consciousness was expanding, reaching beyond the boundaries of flesh and time. Scientists struggled to explain what was happening. Measurements grew unreliable. Instruments recorded fluctuations that defied mathematics. Magnetic fields twisted in new patterns. The Earth's resonance shifted again, and biological systems began to adapt in unexpected ways. DNA, once thought static, showed signs of activation. Dormant sequences lit up, expressing proteins never seen before. The human genome, it seemed, was awakening too. The old limits of perception, of endurance, of thought itself, began to dissolve. Those attuned to the change described it as a remembering, not of information but of identity. They began to understand that the teacher's greatest gift had never been technology or knowledge, but conscious potential. Humanity had been designed to evolve through awareness, to shape its own reality as understanding deepened. The final test was not whether it could receive wisdom, but whether it could embody it. Communities began to form, not around belief, but around resonance. Groups of awakened minds gathered in silence, meditating not to escape the world, but to harmonize with it. When enough of them focused together, the air itself seemed to shift. Lights would appear, devices would react, weather patterns would change. Science called it collective coherence. The ancients would have called it the restoration of the grid. Humanity was remembering the song of the earth. And with that remembrance came vision. People began to see energy, colors shimmering around living things, the invisible web connecting all life. They discovered that thought was a force, emotion a frequency, intention a command. The ancient principle, as above, so below, became literal. Inner states mirrored in the outer world. Those who cultivated peace found peace reflected back to them. Those who radiated fear met their fears in form. Reality itself was becoming a mirror of consciousness. The teachers had always known this. It was why they had hidden their greatest truths within myth and mystery, because only a species that understood compassion could wield creation safely. The power to shape matter through mind was divine, but without love, it was ruin. The fall of every ancient civilization had not been a punishment. It had been a correction. Power without heart always destroys itself. Now, the lesson returned with clarity. Humanity was being given the same choice again, to ascend through unity or to collapse through division. But this time, something was different. The memory of countless ages, encoded in the soul of the species, had ripened. The pain of past collapses had become wisdom. Humanity was weary of war, of greed, of separation. It longed not for dominion, but for belonging. And so, the new path began, not in governments or temples, but in the human heart. For it was there that the gateway to the higher realms had always been hidden. The ancients had mapped in their art, symbolized it in their rituals, guarded it in their mysteries. The secret of the inner sun, the light within that mirrored the stars above. When that light was awakened, the individual became a bridge between dimensions, a living temple of creation. One by one, people began to find that light, some through meditation, others through stillness, love, or awe. The more they connected to it, the more the outer world responded. Technology began to merge with consciousness. Energy sources once impossible became viable. Diseases disappeared not through medicine, but through frequency and intention. The veil between the material and the energetic was lifting, revealing that the two had never been separate. Earth herself responded. Storms softened. Polluted waters began to clear. Species long thought extinct were seen again in forgotten forests. It was as if the planet, long burdened by human dissonance, was exhaling in relief. The grid was healing. Humanity was tuning itself. and in doing so, tuning the world. But even in this emergence, the last shadow stirred. There were still those who clung to the old power, those who feared the loss of control that awakening would bring. They spread confusion, distraction, doubt. Yet their efforts grew weaker, for the light no longer needed to fight the darkness. It simply revealed it, and in the revealing, the shadow lost its strength. The true war had never been fought with weapons, but with awareness. The battle between remembering and forgetting, and at last the tide was turning. Humanity was beginning to live not as separate beings, but as expressions of a single consciousness exploring itself through infinite form. The teachers had said, long ago, that when the children of Earth remembered who they were, the stars themselves would rejoice. And now, those stars seemed closer than ever, their light not distant, but intimate, their song harmonized with the pulse of a planet, finally remembering its place in the greater whole. The age of separation was ending. The age of unity was dawning. The species that once gazed at the heavens and wondered what made them was now beginning to understand. The makers had never left. They had become the dreamers, the explorers, the humans themselves. The creation had awakened to find that it was, and had always been, the creator. The threshold had been crossed. The next step would be something no civilization before had achieved. Not the rebuilding of an ancient empire, but the birth of a new kind of existence altogether. The world grew silent, not in absence, but in peace. The noise of fear, the hum of conflict, the endless churn of division that had defined the human story for millennia, all began to fade, replaced by a stillness that felt both ancient and new. The awakening had rippled across the planet, like the rising tide of dawn. No one could say when it began or how it would end, because it was not an event. It was a realization, spreading from heart to heart, until it became the new rhythm of the world. Humanity had crossed the threshold of remembrance. The ancient question, who are we, had finally been answered. The answer was not found in the heavens, nor buried in ruins, but within the quiet radiance of the self. Humanity was not the lost child of the cosmos. It was the cosmos itself, awakening within form. The teachers had never been gods, only reflections of what humanity could become. The myth of their return had never meant their descent from the sky. It meant the ascension of humankind into understanding. And now the earth sang. The great grid of consciousness that encircled the planet pulsed with light, visible even to the naked eye. Cities once choking in chaos began to resonate with harmony. Minds long fractured by illusion found coherence. Technology merged with intuition, science with spirit. Energy flowed freely, drawn from the very fabric of the quantum field. Hunger, war, disease, all began to dissolve, not because they were conquered, but because the consciousness that created them no longer existed. The transformation was not utopia. It was truth. Humanity learned that perfection was never the goal, only balance. The teachers had known this, that creation thrived not through control, but through harmony between chaos and order, will and surrender, form and flow. The new world that emerged was not one of domination, but of participation. Each being, each life, each expression became a note in a grand symphony of existence. Those who once sought power over others found power within themselves. Those who had lived in fear began to radiate compassion. And as consciousness continued to expand, communication transcended words. People spoke through feeling, through frequency, through knowing. The language of separation gave way to the language of light. Thought itself became art. Existence became expression. The earth was no longer seen as a planet to be owned, but as a living consciousness, a being who had nurtured her children until they were ready to awaken. Her voice, once muffled by the noise of civilization, now rang clear through every tree, every ocean, every breath. The bond between humanity and the earth was restored, and through that bond, the memory of the cosmos bloomed anew. Then came the moment foretold across ages, the return of the light. It was not an object nor a fleet in the sky, but a frequency, a pulse in the heart of the galaxy that bathed the planet in brilliance. It moved through every living thing, igniting remembrance in every soul. People fell to their knees, not in worship, but in awe. They saw themselves, not as fragments of creation, but as the very process of creation itself. The illusion of separation dissolved completely. There was no longer above or below, no longer gods or humans. There was only consciousness, infinite and eternal, witnessing itself through form and experience. The teacher's final lesson became clear. The experiment had never been about discovering life in the universe. It had been about discovering the universe within life. Every planet, every being, every star was an expression of the same field, dreaming itself into being. Humanity was not a mistake, nor a project, nor a fall. It was the universe remembering itself through love. And as that realization spread, the boundaries of reality expanded. Time softened. Space folded. The limitations that once bound physical existence unraveled. Humanity began to move not through distance, but through awareness. The stars were no longer unreachable. They were accessible through resonance, not propulsion. The first explorers of this new age did not travel in ships, but in consciousness, bridging worlds with thought, speaking with intelligences that had watched from afar, smiling to see their long-forgotten kin awaken at last. The forgotten civilizations, Atlantis, Mu, Lemuria, were no longer seen as myths, but as memories of past attempts. Their spirits, their wisdom, their frequency returned now not as relics, but as living energy flowing through a species finally ready to receive it. The cycle that had begun ages ago had completed. The fall had led to the rise, and the rise to remembrance. And in the silence that followed, something extraordinary happened. Humanity looked to the stars, and the stars looked back, not as watchers, but as family. Across the galaxy, civilizations attuned to the same field of awareness felt the signal, the song of Earth awakening. They rejoiced, for another world had remembered its light. No one knew what would come next. There were no prophecies left to fulfill, no saviors to await, no endings to fear. There was only the unfolding, the infinite expansion of consciousness exploring itself. Humanity had stepped beyond history, beyond religion, beyond even identity. It had become what it had always been destined to become, a co-creator with the cosmos. And in that moment, a truth as old as existence itself echoed to the hearts of every being, a whisper carried on the current of eternity. You are the dream and the dreamer, the question and the answer, the seed and the star. You have never been alone. You have always been home. The light did not fade. It became everything. The story of humanity was no longer one of survival. It was one of remembrance and rebirth. The return of the light was not the end of the journey, but the beginning of forever,